Geez, I'm not even audioed. Hello, everybody. I'm just talking straight through. Nothing's good today. It's hot news time, and it's a Thursday, which is a day. So, news stuff, things got going on. I'm gonna drink some coffee during this episode. I've been up since 2:30 a.m. So, let's talk about things such as new Navi cards from AMD. We've got some indication that Navi 14 is appearing all over the place. First, it appeared in some Linux drivers back in June, and then in a CompuBench database back in July, and now it's already popping up around, with Phoronix saying that Navi 14 support is being integrated to the Mesa 3D graphics library. So, Navi 14 appearing all over the place. Well, the weird things though is that it's only supposed to be on par with an RX 570, which means they're kind of skipping the 580 generation altogether. And the only way this makes sense is if it's like $100, like flat. I wouldn't, because you can get an RX 570 for about $150 new right now. Probably closer to $100 used. This Navi 14 GPU would have to be ridiculously cheap if it's gonna be something that's on par with an RX 570. But one of the things about it is it apparently has 1.9 gigahertz base clock and 3 gigabytes of RAM. I'm disturbed. I'm perturbed and disturbed at 3 gigabytes of RAM. That is a low amount, and this feels like an NVIDIA move, not an AMD move, who's probably trying to, unless this is just like some OEM graphics card that's not gonna make it to the mainstream, it's only gonna be used for system integrators and not everybody's gonna see it, then I'm okay with it. Otherwise, 1063 gig again? Really? I don't like this. Don't do this to me, okay? We need more than 3 gigabytes of VRAM in 2019. It's 2019, AMD. However, it does appear that there are other versions of the Navi 14 GPU with 4 and 8 gigabytes. So there's hope that it would just be for a specialized use case and not everybody's gonna get a 3 gig. But no, I don't like this. But you know what I do like is this next article, which has to do with, the reason it's included is because the title is something that Reece would say. So I had to include it, which is the Panda card from Yeston. It's actually also coming out in a 580 variety. It's called the Yeston Qt Pet Radeon RX 580. And the title of the article is, "This RX 580 is the cutest graphics card in the world, and if you disagree, I'll fight you."
Fight for it.
Reece offers to fight everybody. Every single person. He fights with his words. But you know who fights with money? People who sue each other, and that's where the lawsuit between GlobalFoundries and TSMC isn't really heating up, more just like there's an exchange going back and forth, with TSMC issuing a press release basically saying, we have 35,000 patents, 37,000 patents, excuse me. What? Stop, you patent trolls. Bad, GloFo. No, that's my artistic rendition of the press release by TSMC. Basically just a gigantic, no, what are you doing? Stop, you giant don't do it again. We'll see where it goes. And also where we can see where things goes is this new Threadripper leak showing up the 32 core with 4.3 gigahertz boost clocks. Not too bad, especially if you include the roughly 15% IPC improvement on Zen 2 CPUs, a slightly higher clock than the 2990WX by 100 megahertz. This could actually be a really decent beefy CPU, and if it's roughly the same price, AMD's got another winner on their hands. But you know how else AMD's winning? Well, they got ASUS to kowtow like I thought they would. ASUS finally bends the knee to AMD, who says, hey, no PCI Express 4.0 on sub X570 boards. Well, ASUS is starting to remove them from pre-X570 AM4 motherboards because AMD don't like it. And even though ASUS is the bigger company, AMD apparently has the bigger britches. And then, do you want carbon nanotubes in your computer? Do you want them in your processor? Well, in an attempt to try to work around some hurdles with silicon CPUs, RISC-V has made a processor with carbon nanotubes. It's a 16-bit memory processor which can handle 32-bit instructions, and that's about it. I mean, it can do Hello World. If that's, it's a very really new thing, and it probably won't be something that's ever gonna come to consumers, but the carbon nanotube application can find some uses in implementations of silicon CPUs, not necessarily an entire carbon nanotube, but computers starting to become carbon-based life forms. This is what we need for the next generation of AI to take over carbon. And then, in an article that's probably not gonna surprise a whole lot of people, although for one reason or another, it's actually not that big of a deal. I know a lot of our viewers will be like, of course, as soon as I read this headline, which is Intel is accused of anti-competitive practices in India. Reece doing the, what a shocker, hand motion. But, however, it's not that clean and cut. Apparently, it has to do with some warranty implementation on their CPUs. Intel typically offers a global warranty program on their CPUs, but has apparently excluded some of that from being implemented in India. However, one of the things that I was reading upon doing some more research of this article is the fact that a lot of companies in India act this way, where they don't necessarily honor warranties of things that are purchased elsewhere and then brought into India. But people are expecting Intel to, because they have a global warranty program, although Intel is saying, no, we're not going to do that in some instances. So it's a weird little caveat, because Intel isn't the only one doing this. They're just being called out for it right now. And it appears that if this actually gets passed against Intel, it could have a lot of ramifications down the line for other companies honoring warranties in India. So that's my basic understanding of this anti-competitive practices in India. It's not necessarily that they're trying to get retailers to only sell Intel chips or anything like that. They're actually just adhering, from what I can gather, normal warranty practices in India. But I'm also not in that region. So if you have any more insight on this warranty kerfuffle, let me know down in the comments. Speaking of kerfuffles, Borderlands 3. Epic Games exclusive. Well, they just came out with the recommended and basic specs for playing Borderlands 3. You actually don't need a whole heckin' lot to play it on basics, which, I mean, if you look at Borderlands 2, kind of makes sense. The basics are just going to be like a 3rd gen i5 FX 8350 with potentially an HD 7970 or a GTX 680. That's not a whole lot. But then recommended specs, you got an RX 590, GTX 1060, Ryzen 5 2600, and i7 4770. All in one system. If you don't have it in one system, you can't run Borderlands. But you know who throws things at things? Pokemon Masters, throwing Pokeballs at Pokemon, which you can now do if you want to play Pokemon Masters. It's available on iOS and Android. It's another Pokemon game. I'm still not sure necessarily why I would get this over anything else, but you can do it if you want. Congratulations. But you know what else you can do? Apparently play PlayStation 3 games emulated now, because there's been a demo showing off that Metal Gear Solid 4 can run at 4K 30 FPS in the RPSC3 emulator. I actually followed this a little bit back in 2016, right before Ryzen launched. I was following the RPSC3 development of the emulator, and back then they really benefited from more cores to kind of emulate the cell architecture on the PS3, and I presumed that Ryzen would definitely make things easier, and then obviously more core counts come out from Intel since then. But it's good to see that they're actually getting a lot of development on this, and that some staples of the PS3 era are actually being played at respectable frame rates. 4K 30 is pretty happening. Do you like video game emulation? Let me know down below in the comments. And then, do you have $4,400? Okay, Reece says yes. Do you have that much money for a fridge? Let me tell you the special thing that this fridge does, okay? It makes clear ice on top of making regular ice. And not just that, the clear ice is gigantic ball cocktail ice. Yes, my friends, LG Smart Fridge can make crystal clear ice cocktails. Ice for cocktails, excuse me, for you for the low, low price of $4,400. Just get a nice machine, my friends. Just get a specialized machine, okay? All right, do that.
It's just ice. It cools the drink off. What the hell?
And then Sharp is going to be showing off their biggest, largest 8K TV in existence. It's going to be 120 inches, a gigantic one, and have 5G connectivity. Why? Because the Internet of Things needs to take over, but they're unveiling it at IFA Berlin, which I believe is happening next weekend. So 120-inch 8K TV, you know you want it. And you know what else you want to? You want to spend $4,000 on the Panasonic S1H. Man, my brain's not working on that one. This is a pretty impressive full-frame camera, up to 6K recording. You can get 4K 60 on a crop sensor with 10-bit color. Has 5-axis IBIS, in-body image stabilization. I'm dying. It has a lot of good things, costs $4,000, which would put it in direct competition to roughly the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, which doesn't have, the Blackmagic Pocket's actually more for stable environments, where it looks like the S1H is gonna be more for like wedding videography and like run and gun and stuff with that image stabilization, whereas you know, the Blackmagic sucks. But you know what doesn't suck? Sony's new cameras, which they announced yesterday, the A6600 and the A6100. They're gonna be the flagship, or the 6600 is gonna be the flagship of the APS-C size cameras that Sony has to offer. It has a lot of the good stuff that the A6500 did have, which is the second camera that we used for UFD Tech, but it adds things such as a microphone or headphone jack. It's going to offer 425 phase detection autofocus points at a 0.02 second autofocus speed. And then it's supposed to have a gigantic battery grip, which will allow you to actually get better battery life, because if that's the downfall of any A6500, it's the fact that the batteries last like an hour. That's it. But with this, it's going to have big batteries, and I believe I read it somewhere, but I can't find it in this article, where that Sony is claiming that this is going to be the longest battery life of any handheld camera out there. It's going to be ridiculous because they sip juice, which is why the battery is so small in the previous A-Series, but introducing one of the big batteries onto it and giving you a bigger hand grip, I'm all for this. It makes a lot of sense. You know what else makes a lot of sense? Letting children name the Mars 2020 rover. Yes, my friends, NASA is holding a competition where they're gonna have children in elementary school, middle school, and high school try to enter to name the Mars rover from 2020, and it's gonna be judged based on appropriateness, originality, and significance, so Rover McRoverface is a no-go. Lame. It should be called the Philip J. Fry rover. That's what it should be called. And I bet you if Elon Musk was sending this rover, he'd name it that. But speaking of Elon Musk, Tesla is now offering car insurance in California. Seems like a cool thing, but of course Tesla has all the data on what you do with your car. And so if you're terrible at driving, maybe consider somebody who's not monitoring everything you do in your car. Speaking of monitoring you though, Uber is proposing a new policy that could potentially give their drivers a minimum wage of $21 per hour, specifically in the San Francisco Bay Area. However, when reached for comment, the drivers in San Francisco were just like, that is not even a living wage here. How could you just sully us with that? Part of the reason this is happening is because Uber drivers are banding together to pass legislation against gig economy stuff such as this, and this appears to be Uber's way of trying to not only assuage the base level concerns of drivers, but also to prevent them from unionizing in some of the ways that they implement this stuff. So it's a big, complicated story. $21 an hour actually seems like a fantastic minimum wage for me, but I also will never, ever live in San Francisco, and I don't care to huff my own Prius farts, thank you. I'm sure we have viewers from San Francisco. Leave me alone. But speaking of sniffing your own Prius farts, DARPA has tweeted, the Defense Agency Research Program, I forget what the acronym is. Anyways, DARPA, the people who invented the internet, or the World Wide Web, or the people who just do research for the defense program. Anyways, they're asking for people to send them their abandoned tunnels. The tweets go, attention city dwellers, we're interested in identifying university-owned or commercially managed underground urban tunnels and facilities able to host research and experimentation. Why? 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 Why do you need my tunnels? What are you digging up underneath me? And then underneath the ocean are supposed to be some cables going from LA to Hong Kong, but apparently the US Department of Justice potentially might be blocking this, an 8,000 mile stretch of cable going from LA to Hong Kong. I already said that, I don't know why I said that. It seems like it could potentially not go through, and then the world is less connected than it ever was before. Now I'm gonna disconnect from this episode of Hot News. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you and everything that you've done for us, including hitting that like button, getting subscribed to Hot News, and staying with me, even when I'm a tired mess because my son keeps me up at night. Cut that part, because leave me alone. Goodbye. Make a Lisa Sue pantsuit joke, but she also wears dresses sometimes, so it'd be wrong and inappropriate. Don't include any of that, Jason.